Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Soul Tree, and I don't know what to call this. This isn't really an episode. It's more of a check-in slash. I want to talk about this book I'm reading. But first thing is first, I am getting guests lined up. I want to move this microphone. Sorry, I don't like when I can see the microphone. Now I sound bad. All right, how's that? That's good. I don't like when I see the microphone in the screen for some reason. It just weirds me out. Anyways, so I want to get some guests lined up. It looks like I have a couple good ones coming up here soon. My goal is to have weekly or at least bi-weekly guests on the show. If you want to call it a show, channel, podcast, whatever you want to call it, it's fine. And that's good. I've got a trauma therapist I'm lining up. I've got another doctor. I've got several different pieces coming together so we can explore the realms of the psyche and see what happens when we do that. My name is Ryan again. Sorry, I forget to introduce myself all the time. And what was I going to say? Well, there's a book I want to talk about, which is one good thing. But the other piece that I think is of utmost importance is I'm thinking about this. Okay, so I've got these books that I'm reading, and they're all really good books, right? Like the one I'm going to review or talk about, because I'm not totally done with it, so it's not really a review. It's more of a check-in. But I've got these books that I'm reading, and they're all pretty good. Now, I'm also starting to experiment with audiobooks a little bit. For example, I started listening to Carl Jung on tape today. Now, I've learned a lot about people who know a lot about Carl Jung. I've learned a lot from those people, from their books, from teachers, from commentary, but I haven't read a lot of Jung. I've read a little bit. I've read some essays and so forth, but I haven't really dove in. I haven't really dove in and just really experienced that work. So I got one of the audiobooks, Man's Search for Soul, I believe, and started listening to it today. Just some great analysis on dreams, some really good insight into dream analysis, rather. And it was just it just blew my mind. I started thinking about dreams that I had recently and started thinking about how I would somehow engage that dream framework from the perspective in which he was engaging the dream analysis, the techniques that he was sharing. What's amazing is how he understands how to decode these dreams. I mean, Sam Harris has this classic argument, like, you could do that with anything. You could say, this keyboard represents the various letters that put my life together, but I have to seek and learn how to put it all together by closing my eyes and learning how to type without looking at the keyboard itself. That's like having faith. It's not like that, because what Jung is doing is much more articulated, much more well-informed. I would say what Jung is doing is kind of freaky. I mean, I'm listening to, like, he's giving examples, like this example of this one woman who had a dream where her mom was hanging in this creepy house and wind was blowing through the house, and he decoded that dream in such a way that absolutely blew my mind. I mean, I was like, what the heck? I guess so excited to, like, get, that giddy feeling, like that just pumped up feeling that you get when something excites you, when you're passionate, when you get the chills. That's the feeling I get. This guy speaks like a meta language that, like, transcends the scientific understanding we have of the world. Like, he's like 300 or 400 years ahead of his time. I really think that. I think several years from now, maybe 300 or 400 is a long ways, but maybe 50 or more, people are going to look back on Carl Jung and be like, wow, he understood things that we're now just starting to prove about the collective, about dreams, about the way the psyche works. I think that's really going to be the case. Which really leads me into this book I have been reading by Dr. Jordan Peterson, and it's called Maps of Meaning. And for those of you who are only listening to audio, I'm holding up the book right now. It's a pretty big book. And I'm on page 384. And I have to say, this book has changed my life. Now, and I'm not finished with it. I feel kind of silly for talking about it before I finish it. It doesn't feel like a very Peterson thing to do. Feels like he'd be like, dude, you gotta finish what you start before you try to put it out there on a platform. Anyways, that's funny, but whatever. I felt inspired to talk about it, and that's, by the way, if we're talking psychology, that's my projection of what Peterson would say. I'm projecting that he would say that. I'm projecting that he would think that. So there's actually a part of me inside that thinks that, which really means that I need to have a conversation with that part of myself. Okay? It always comes back to the inside. What Dr. Strachan, my mentor, my wise old mentor, Dr. Roger Strachan, keeps telling me, he's a great therapist. He's been doing it for years. He always tells me, all you do as a good therapist is you put people at war with themselves. Put them in conflict that they're already in, make them aware of that conflict, put them at war within themselves so they don't project and go at war with the world or, repress and try to get away from it. And all the various other mechanisms. I guess suppress would be another way. Anyways, man, I'm not on topic. Really struggling. Maps of meaning. Okay, first thing that this book has done for me. I can now see the world through a framework of order and chaos. I can see the world that way. I can literally look out onto the world and see it from a framework of not just physically. I'm talking like conceptually understanding my life, my job, my relationships, the people that I am constantly interacting with, the actions that I'm taking, the belief systems that I'm holding. I mean, it is called the architecture of belief. That's the Maps of Meaning, the architecture of belief. It is really quite amazing. No, so I can start saying, okay, so the fatherly, that's more of a woman figure, isn't it? Man, I am just not sure about this. Like, I'm in the middle of this video right now, and I'm seriously like, I don't know if this is going up. This might just be one of those days where things just don't come together. I might just have to go to bed, sleep it off. I'm going to keep trying. Okay, the fatherly figure is the archetype of order. The motherly figure is the archetype of chaos. Or the reality is made out of order and chaos. That is an interesting thing to say. No, it's not made out of order and chaos, I hear you saying. Well, just check this out. We view our reality through an a priori substructure that is just filled. It's just absolutely filled with so much symbolism, metaphor, and belief. We don't actually view reality, as this guy Robert Lanza is helping me discover in biocentrism. We view reality through this a priori structure of a biological mechanism. Now, what that means is that what we see is part of our a priori belief structure, part of our mythic circuitry in our brain. Now, it sounds a little bit out there, right? But it's pretty simple when you start thinking about the reticular activating system, which is like your, Larry Kendall calls it your onboard search engine. You go like onto Google and you want to type something in and then you find it. That's what your reticular activating system does in your brain. It programs your brain to find things based on the search words, based on the program that you've put in your brain. So our brains, our nervous system, our bodies are programmed to view the world through this archetypal substructure. That's the evolutionary biology of the whole thing. I'm learning a ton from this book because it not only justifies and represents and honors history in a very unique, interdisciplinary, well put together way, it also shows you how to start embodying the hero's story in your own life, and it explains it very well. And you listen to a lot of Peterson lectures and you start to understand the hero's journey. You voluntarily, that's the key word, voluntarily step into chaos and reintegrate order out of that chaos, and that is the hero's myth. You don't know if you're going to make it or not. It's scary. You're in the unknown. You're confronting the great mother. You're confronting nature versus society, which is the great father, where you've got walls around you. You're structured. You're safe. You're protected from the unknown, but you won't grow. That's why Peterson talks about, and he might talk about it in this book, he talks about it in lectures, that's why the Buddha had to leave the walls of the palace. So anyways, I know that's very clear to many of us who've listened to those lectures, but it is pounded home in such a way in this book where you get to marinate with it over and over again. I literally started seeing my life, understanding the places of chaos, understanding the deeper archetypal reality, understanding the places of order, understanding where I'm in balance or out of balance, understanding where it's time to start stretching myself, understanding my fears. I mean, so much of my fears is fears of confronting that great and terrible unknown. So much of my defects of character are about either relying too heavily on being too open and too unknown, or too rigid and too stagnant. In viewing the world from this polar place, understanding that reality has just been exceptionally helpful. It also, in my coaching practice and working with clients, starting to hear the chaos in the order, starting to hear the benevolent mother versus the chaotic mother versus the terrible mother, starting to hear the protective, loving, strong father versus the father that devours his children versus the father that takes things too far, that turns into a kind of a fascism type of feeling, kind of a over controlling, just crushes your spirit. You know what I mean? And then the openness and the entangled forests of nature just suck you up, and you get immersed in chaos, and you have no identity, no structure, no one to rely on, and nothing that you can eat, nothing you can do. So this is all very abstract, right? But when you start thinking of the minute details of this, for example, schedule, being on my schedule, being on top of the things that I'm committed to. If I'm over rigid with that schedule, I am identifying myself in relationship to that constrictive, orderly, overly rigid father archetype of society. It must be a certain way. It's always been that way. It always will be that way. Versus if I go back to the other side and I over-identify with, in relationship to this unstructured, I don't need a schedule, I don't need discipline, I just need to follow my bliss, follow the openness, follow the free flow, man. It's no big deal. Then I'll be consumed by the unknown. I'll have no structure for which I can convey and grow within. You know, it's interesting. It's like that fine line. I think there's a quote in this book that says the knower, meaning actually part of that hero archetype, the knower is the one who sits in the middle of the Tao, between the known and the unknown, riding that razor's edge. That's not a direct quote. It's pretty close, but it's not direct. That razor's edge, imagine that Tao, that yin-yang symbol, that razor's edge. You're on that edge between order and chaos. And I know that you can say that abstractly, but when you start reading this book, you start to see it everywhere. It's magnificent. I hope I'm doing a good job explaining it. I think I'm doing a mediocre job explaining it, but I think it's good enough. It's good enough to share my excitement, my passion. This is not an easy book to read, okay? I don't know. There's probably some really smart people out there that could whiz through it, but sometimes I have to read the same page 2-3 times. Sometimes I can get through stuff that is really easy for me to understand. Sometimes it drags along and I'm reading through it, and it gets dense, and I have to really focus to understand and really stay disciplined with it. And other times when it's really in the open material that's about the hero's story and how to rearticulate order out of chaos and these kind of meta truths, I really do well with the meta truths and the conceptuals. And when it gets down into the nitty gritty details, sometimes I gotta really focus in. And it's not an easy read by any means, but it's well worth it. I mean, I've got about 70, 80 something, less than 100 pages left, and I'm in the section of the book that's really about the archetype of the hostile brothers, Cain and Abel, which is funny because me and my brother got in a fight this summer during our family reunion time, so that was fitting. So the way I started this book a few months ago, and then I took a break. Actually, I started it more than a few months ago. I started it around the new year, and I read it diligently, every day for a while, and got a few hundred pages deep. And then I took a break. I just got other patterns. It's just such a long read. I got distracted and was still digesting a lot of the information, so I took a break, and now I'm back into it. I want to finish this last finishing things. Finishing things is an important one for me. I tend to start a lot of books, and finishing them is important. When I finish a book, I feel good about it. So I'd like to really focus in and finish this book in a way that's really well thought out. And let me just read you a couple. When I say well thought out, I mean really focused. Let me just read you a couple quotes that have really hit home for me, just so you can get an idea. Oh, okay, here's a great one. The unknown or unexpected or novel appears when plans go wrong, when behavioral adaptation or interpretive schema fails to produce what is desired or to predict what occurs. The appearance of the unexpected or unpredictable inhibits ongoing goal-directed activity. Okay, this is really important because we do coaching, right? In the Earth-Based Institute and the training that I have, we do life coaching. It's all goal-oriented. It's all about what you want and how you're moving towards that. And then the rest of your reality, he talks about in this book, when you're focused on a goal, your reticular he doesn't use that terminology, I don't believe in the book, but your reticular activating system is programmed to search for that goal, but everything else in your reality becomes either threat or promise. Okay? Threat meaning that's getting in the way of my goal. Promise meaning that's helping me come to fruition with that goal. So that is a game changer. So I don't know what that really means is when I'm really oriented towards that, if I'm walking, if my goal is to get to that wall and that my brain is on board with that goal 100%, then all that I'm going to see, I'm going to miss a lot. All I'm really going to be noticing in my conscious awareness is what's getting in the way or what's helping me achieve that. The floor in front of me. Okay? The furniture that might be in my way in between me and that wall. So, to make it a little more complicated, if I'm moving towards a goal, let's say a goal of exercise is always an easy one, a goal of exercising diligently and making these improvements on my physique and my health and my lungs and my cardiovascular health and so forth, then what that's going to mean is that I'm going to be really noticing all the pieces in my life that are going to help me move towards health. I'm going to see all the health posters and magazines. I'm going to notice the nice vegetable smoothie or juice at the grocery store. I'm going to notice all the healthy people. I'm going to notice all those things, but I'm also going to notice all the threats. I'm going to notice all the things. My threat system's going to get activated, and I'm going to really be hyper vigilant about those things that are getting in the way, whether it be temptation or busyness in my schedule is getting harder to get to the gym, or noticing people who I perceive as unhealthy, because that reminds me of the potential of being unhealthy in myself. So that's how I'm viewing reality. It's pretty polar. It's not including all the other complexities of reality. It's pretty goal-centric. It's really focused on that one aspect of motivation. For some reason, my screen locked here. 1 second. I hate it when it does that. Okay, I'm back. So what happens is basically something unknown comes into the picture. We get triggered. We get upset. We get distracted. Our threat systems are activated. And then we're thrown, if we don't handle it correctly, we're thrown back into chaos. And we're no longer on that edge between the known and the unknown, because when you're on the edge between the known and the unknown, you're pushing yourselves to grow, but at the same time, you're on that edge because you could fall towards chaos at any given moment, or you could fall towards order at any given moment, where I go to the gym too much and I'm overly rigid and that's not healthy, and I don't know, that could be the other extreme. But so falling back into chaos is what would be the relapse, and then having to understand what just happened. There was a piece of information, because my system, my body, my brain did not know that there was going to be that threat, that obstacle that was going to keep me from engaging my goal fully. So I think that's a fascinating piece of the archetypal truths right there. So what it really means is that, like, the relapsing is a part of the learning, because I didn't know that. I didn't know I'd get so triggered by that donut. I didn't know. I didn't know I wasn't going to be able to make it to the gym because I got in an argument with my partner. Okay, chaos. Now I have to re-articulate my experience. I have to reformulate my goal. I have to include the lessons I've learned. Otherwise, I'll be just as insufficient again the next time I try to achieve that goal, and I will again fall flat on my face. And the learning piece is seeming to be very important here. To integrate the unknown, make it known, and then move closer to that goal. And so that's like that quote, that cheesy quote, is success is just a series of many failures, right? Well, I think that's what that means. I don't know if I just sound like a guy that's pointing out obvious things. The way that let's just put it this way. Read the book, okay? I'm not doing it justice, but that's just one line. That's one line, okay? There's so many gold nuggets in this book. It's just amazing. I got one more for you, and then I'll let you go. I'm so organized, if you can't tell. Okay, here's some mythic speech for you. A ring of ancestral spirits, invisible and unknown, surrounds the modern individual and protects him or her magically from darkness and chaos. When the ring is broken, the principles these spirits represent become subject to critical evaluation, to the onslaught of other forms of heroism, to other ideologies, to the weight of individual experience. Knowledge loses context, and the known reverts to the unknown. This does not mean the terrible mother herself sleeps under the human consciousness. It means that the reason for her existence thousands of years ago are still sufficient reasons today. Okay. Those rings are like society, structure, experience, history. All the unseen, mythic belief structures that we depend on, that we don't realize we depend on, which is basically what Peterson is saying Nietzsche predicted, right? Like, once those things start to go out the window, we are back into chaos. And at that point, we have choice. And the choice is to identify with the archetype of the hero. And maybe we'll make it, maybe we won't. But to identify with the archetype of the hero and to willingly encounter that unknown with good faith that if we put our best foot forward, and we listen for the instructions that would inform our being, our soul, our mind, to take the right actions, to bring the right order back into the system, that we could do it. That we could reintegrate the past and turn it into a better future by living on the edge, the razor's edge of the present. And so I think that the potential is really extreme, right? It's the potential to complete the hero's journey, or the potential to slide into chaos because we have no substructures to identify with. And maybe that's the meta myth that we're all living as a collective right now, is that we need to reintegrate as a humanity, as a Western culture. We need to reintegrate what it means to be living a life in a proper way. And I think that's why this stuff is getting so much attention. That's why people like me who are in their 20s are pursuing careers like coaching and wilderness guiding and reading these things and caring about them. I think, at least, part of the reason. There's a calling deep from the underworld, submerged in mystery, and the Great Father shines light from above down below and beckons you to bring the ancestors up from the underworld and integrate them into the heavens. Or we just meet them halfway, right here on Earth. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about, man. 26 minutes. It's long enough. 27. I'll probably be back with an actual episode that's about an interview or a topic that I've chosen. All right. Soul Tree. Peace.